Hey guys, welcome to Haunted Hospitality. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different than normal. We had a pretty busy schedule for a while there, and so we were pretty much recording 2 or 3 days before we were releasing episodes. And that's generally not how we operate. We generally record a couple weeks before we release the episode, and we were finally getting caught up, and then we were getting ahead. So we did have 2 weeks ahead. So this episode that you're listening to actually is taking place about 2.5, 3 weeks after Robin got into an accident. She did get injured in that accident. She's safe at home. She's doing well. She's going to make a full recovery. But I would like to ask everyone to just keep her in your thoughts. We'd like to not share any details at this time until Robin can get back onto the show and just kind of tell things from her point of view. So I'm not going to share too much detail, just she was hurt, she's recovering, she's going to get better. So don't worry. But because of that, it does make recording a little bit of an issue. We're going to be a little bit more free thinking, I guess you could say. We're going to be a little bit more flexible in the future on these episodes. There might be 2, 3, maybe 4 that things are going to be a little bit different, but we hope that you stick with us. We're going to do our best to get you the regular content as soon as you can, but we would like to give Robin a couple weeks at minimum to just recover. So thank you so much for bearing with us as we go through this. So this upcoming episode right now, this is actually a Patreon exclusive episode that you guys are getting for free. Woo! So this is not Southern. We're going to actually talk about a very popular Massachusetts case, the Lizzie Borden case, and it's one of Robin's favorites. So this is why we're going to go share it with you guys now. So you'll probably hear something along the lines of, if you're listening to this and you're not a Patreon supporter, that means you stole it. Don't worry, we're sharing it for free, knowingly. So again, thank you guys so much for sticking with us, and without further ado, please continue to the episode.
Welcome to Haunted Hospitality, Southern Stories Told by Spooky Gingers. I'm Robin.
And I'm Zoey.
And I have a story for you today.
Yes, we have an extra-sode.
We have an extra-sode, finally. We promised you this, and now we have delivered.
Yes.
X months later.
Yeah, I think, so right now we're recording this in December 2021. Mm-hmm. I believe this is going out May 2022.
Are you serious?
Yes.
To be fair, we are way ahead of our game.
We are way ahead of our game.
Yeah. Maybe, one day we'll actually end up just recording 2 episodes instead of,
5.
3 or 4. We did 4 last time. That was a lot of episodes.
Yes.
Okay, but we are here right now.
Yes.
And so what we want to do with these extra-sodes is do a researched topic like we normally do, except without the something Southern or something spooky beforehand. And these are things that cannot fit into our main podcast because it's not Southern, but it's stories that we find very interesting and we would want to do research on and learn about ourselves, and so we are sharing it with you.
Yes.
So Zoey, you know what I'm talking about. Everybody knows this topic, I feel like, who is listening to a true crime / paranormal podcast. Mm-hmm. So you and I know, have differing ideas about
what happened.
Get into it with me. This is our free zone. These are our patrons. They like us. You can fight me? Okay, girl.
I will fight you. Fisticuffs. Come on. Pow.
All right, let's do fisticuffs.
We're
talking about Lizzie Borden.
Yes, we are, and how innocent she is.
Okay, I didn't plan this to be she's innocent, she's guilty. But if we're doing this, she's guilty.
No, not at all.
I completely think she's guilty.
I think she was in Lesbians with the maid, and that she's completely innocent. We're gonna get
to that. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a little bit of a history of the family, a little bit of history of the situation, a little bit of history of their town, and the floor plan of their house.
Okay.
I got into it, guys. So, Andrew Borden, he married a woman named Sarah Morse when he was 23 years old. They had 2 girls together. Well, actually, they ended up having 3 girls together, but one of them, who was the middle child, passed away when she was 2 years old.
Okay.
Their first child they had when it was 1851, and it was a daughter named Emma. Their second child, who lived to adulthood, was born in 1860. Her name was Lizzie.
Yes.
I feel like we all know where this is going.
Yes.
So Sarah died, their mother died on March 26th, 1863, and she had Emma, her older daughter, promise her that she would take care of Lizzie. Because at that age, I'm going to do some math real quick, Emma would have been 12, Lizzie would have been 3. That would kind of have been Emma's role if the father did not remarry, to take care of the younger daughter. Now, that being said, Andrew did remarry. It was 1865, which is like a respectable amount of time, especially in those days, to wait.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times in those days it was like, and a month later he remarried.
Exactly.
But this was 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So both daughters, Emma and Lizzie, lived at home with their father and stepmother, and they did this as they grew older. So at the time when, we're not there yet, but at the time when a lot of our story takes place, they are 32 and 41, still living at home, but it wasn't necessarily abnormal for the time. There was quite a few ways, it seemed, that you could be a Victorian woman and still be respectable. And one of them was to simply be single, but be active in your community. And it's kind of interesting because Emma was not, actually. Emma was not active in her community, but she was there in the house and living there. But Lizzie was really the one who was active. She was a Sunday school teacher. She was in a thing called the Women's Christian Temperance Union. She was a member of the board of the local hospital. She was in it.
Okay.
She was respectable.
Yes.
They lived on a busy street in Fall River, Massachusetts. And this...
Fun fact, that's where a lot of my family lives.
Oh my... Portuguese. Is that the Portuguese part of your family? Yes. Because a lot of it came up was that a lot of people who are of Portuguese descent live there now.
Yep.
Factors in. Very interesting. Wait, they're literally from Fall River?
They're near that area, yeah.
That's so interesting because that place is so dominated by Lizzie Borden interest and intrigue.
Like
share these things.
Where we stayed in Fall River when I went to go visit family in 2016.
That is so interesting, Zoey. Okay, cool. Well, this town was a textile mill town.
I'm sorry, 2018 was when I went. Sorry, go ahead.
Fine. This town was a textile mill town, and it was sharply divided in class structure at the time in the mid to late 1800s in the same way that a lot of textile mill towns were, because you have the people who own the mills and who profit off the mills, and then you have people who work in the mills. And literally, the way this town was divided, the people of the upper class literally lived above the people of the lower class. And by that I mean there was literally a hill called the Hill, and it was the neighborhood that the wealthier people lived in. The Bordens did not live on the hill. They actually lived in a neighborhood that had a strong immigrant presence, which seemed to be one of the things that Lizzie resented. She seemed to have a lot of prejudice against that group. There were a lot of Portuguese and Irish immigrants around them, and I think there was a religious divide as well, because a lot of these people were Catholic, and
my family's Catholic.
Yeah. And the Bordens, and I think a lot of the people on the hill were Protestants.
Right.
So this was a class distinction that Lizzie probably felt very distinctly, and she wanted to live on the hill. One, a lot of the people who were in the groups that she was in, these women groups, they were on the hill as well, and her family had the money to do so. Borden's had been in the town for 5 ever. Her dad was the president of the bank. He had an estate which, if it were all put into cash and the cash were adjusted for today, it would be $7 million.
Yes. But he was stingy, right?
He was stingy. He was frugal. The house they lived in, it was 2 stories with attic for the 3rd story. And it was very cramped in there. For one case, they only had 1 water closet, which think water closet as in a small bathroom is the best I can think of it. It was in the basement. And then I'm going to show you maybe a floor plan of the house later. I'm just really into the floor plan of the house. You could not get around very easily. The rooms were connected not by hallways, but you could enter into one room and then go into another room. And then there was a block almost in the middle of the house, I think particularly in the upper floor. So like there were starting over. There were 2 staircases. One was in the front of the house. You go up the front of the house staircases, you see the guest room and you see Lizzie's bedroom. You can, I think, get to Emma's bedroom somewhere through there, but you cannot go to Lizzie's bedroom and then get to the master bedroom. You have to go to the back staircase, go up, and then get to the master bedroom. There was a wall. That means, like, you can't get from one place to the other without going to another floor and then crawling your way back up. Okay. This house was cramped, is what I'm getting at. Mm-hmm. And I think it was so hard to get around. I saw a thing that said they didn't really use the water closet very much and would instead empty buckets of their waste into the backyard.
And I believe this was a time when plumbing was becoming a thing, and Lizzie begged her father to get plumbing in the house, and he denied that request.
I did not see that, but that makes so much sense because I'm just looking at this, and I'm thinking that is my worst nightmare of a bathroom situation.
Yes, yeah.
I'm a person who, if I could just have my own bathroom for forever, I would be so happy to never share a bathroom.
That's basically how Kari and I do it. That's my bathroom and that's his bathroom.
That is perfect. That is ideal. I love that for you guys.
Thank you.
So, in this house that was a little bit cramped, tensions were starting to rise because, like I said, Lizzie wanted to live in the rich place, and I think, and I don't know, but it's just these people have been living together for almost their whole lives. Abby was literally with them since Lizzie was 5 years old, and Abby again is her stepmother. Tensions start to rise. I attribute it maybe to the fact that, actually, I don't know what I attribute to. I think it's to the fact that, like, the father didn't want to pay to live on the hill, and she really wanted him to. I'm going to get into that a bit more in a second, but first I want to read to you what a novelist who used to be neighbors with Lizzie when the novelist was a child wrote about her later in life. Quote, "Tall, stocky, jowly, dressy, and unremarkable. Photographs assure me that her eyes were as I remember them, huge and protruding, their irises an almost colorless ice blue. I have heard many people speak of them as dead eyes, but the eyes of the dead are dull. Lizzie's had the shine of beach pebbles." Snaps.
Okay.
I enjoyed that description of her, so I wanted to read that out. Now, like I said, Abby, the stepmother, had been in Lizzie's life since Lizzie was 5 years old. You would kind of think that would make her basically Lizzie's mom for how Lizzie would view her. That is not the case. Lizzie actually grew up calling her mother. But in 1887, when Lizzie was 27 years old, she stopped that. She started referring to Abby as her stepmother. And I'm just going to go along the timeline of this. I think the way I'm going to divide this up is by, here's the date, and sequentially is what I'm going to do it as. Okay. There's a lot of different ways to tell the story. I'm going to do it chronologically. Bridget Sullivan was an Irish immigrant in her 20s, and she started working for the Bordens as a maid in 1889. And the family apparently called her Maggie. I am not sure why, but
I think it was a pet name common for maids.
Okay, I didn't know that. I'm just kind of going to go forward calling her Bridget. That's because I didn't know what she wanted to be called, and I can't ask her.
Yes.
Unfortunately. Though, honestly, if I could get a sit-down discussion with this maid, I would. I'd be like, listen, I feel like you know some things. Or maybe she doesn't. I don't know. We're going to get to all that.
Yes, we are.
So, on June 24th, 1891, money and jewelry were stolen from the master bedroom where Andrew and Abby slept, and this was during the broad daylight. This was when only Emma, Lizzie, and Bridget were home. Now, Lizzie had been accused by some local store owners of shoplifting from them, and the family kind of thought it was Lizzie who committed this crime, and so they couldn't prove it necessarily. So after that, they started locking their doors that lead outside, but they started locking their doors that were inside the house too. Like I said, you can't get to this room without going through X room. So that is leading to, like, literally I can't get to the places I need to go. That's just my mind looking at that, very annoyed, but also I get it if you think your daughter is stealing from you.
Right.
So apparently, and I don't know when this happened, but Andrew did have a piece of property, it seems, that was separate from the house they lived in, and I think Lizzie was hoping he would give it to her and Emma, but actually he gave it to his wife's sister. Yes. And that caused anger between them. And the anger was just starting to escalate. For example, in April 1892, she told a cloakmaker named Hannah Gifford that her stepmother is a mean old thing. That is a quote. So it is starting to bubble over out of sight of the family home into everybody knowing about it.
So, for context, he was not giving Lizzie what she wanted, which was the house in the hill.
Yes.
But he kept giving, there's more than one instance of him giving his wife's family some of their land and money.
Okay.
Yes, there was multiple instances.
Gotcha. Because in my research, I only saw this one thing that was,
Okay.
I think mentioned once.
Okay.
Okay, so there's multiple instances of that. Yeah, thank you for interrupting me. I appreciate that. Genuinely.
Okay.
I know it sounds fake, but I actually really do. So, now this is really sad. So, Lizzie had built a roost in the loft of the barn for pigeons that were living there.
Mm-hmm.
And her dad was saying that the pigeons were attracting neighbor boys who wanted to come up and hunt the pigeons, I guess, for sport or something. So, he took a hatchet. And in May or June of 1892, he actually beheaded the pigeons.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this caused a lot of strife between the two of them because I don't know if they were like considered her pets, but really she was kind of providing the care for them. And in July 21st, so about a month or two later, there was an argument within the family. We don't actually know a lot of details about it, or at least I was unable to find a lot of details about it. And Lizzie and Emma departed for a trip to New Bedford and stayed there for a while. And it seems that Emma stayed in New Bedford while you're like, yep, you got that right. While Lizzie came back to Fall River, but instead of going to the house, she stayed at I think a boarding house for a little bit of time. And I guess, I don't know, maybe she cooled down, decided to come back.
Okay.
So.
And my nodding isn't, yes, you got that right. It's, yes, okay, that I'm remembering that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, on the morning of August 2nd, Lizzie is back. Abby and Andrew wake up feeling sick to their stomach. Abby decides on the 3rd, so this has been continuing to a second day, she talks to a doctor. And this doctor, if I'm connecting the doctors correctly, this doctor actually lives across the street from them. And he is a good friend of theirs. He is their family doctor. And she tells him that she is worried she is being poisoned, which is an interesting conclusion to jump to.
Uh-huh.
And the doctor thinks, that is an interesting conclusion to jump to. I think you've cooked your fish weird, or your fish have gone bad. And then Andrew came back, saw that the fact that the doctor was there, and was like, oh my God, we just are vomiting. It's okay. Leave, doctor, leave. He didn't want to pay for the doctor, which is like, okay, whatever. On August 3rd, so the same day that Abby consulted the doctor, Lizzie went to a pharmacist to get a thing called prussic acid, which is a known poison. Multiple people report seeing her there, and the pharmacist did try to testify, but they did keep this out of later testimony, like later evidence for the jury. So the jury that ultimately acquitted her, because, okay, there's no spoilers in this, the jury that ultimately acquitted her did not have access to this information.
Okay.
She went in there claiming that she needed prussic acid to clean a sealskin cape she had, but the pharmacist refused to give her the poison.
Okay.
I guess maybe he was a little bit suspicious about his purposes. Maybe he doesn't give that thing out. I don't quite know why he didn't give it to her, but it was a thing that he remembered when he heard what else happened. Now, John Morse, I'm sure you're gonna bring him up. John Morse was Lizzie and Emma's maternal uncle, so their mother's brother, and he came to visit the family on the evening of August 3rd, and the intention was to stay for a while and visit other people in the area, so he was staying with them now. And that night, Lizzie goes down the street and visits her friend, who's named Alice Russell, who is a neighbor and her bestie, and who is also single and also 40 years old.
Okay.
Just some information on Alice Russell. And she told her that she is worried that her father has enemies that are poisoning the family.
Mm-hmm.
And she is suspicious of people near the house. Like, I think she's saying that she's seen some suspicious people near the house.
Okay.
That's what I got from that interaction. Now, it should be said, I don't quite know if she was vomiting or not by this point, just because, okay, this is now the second or third day that everybody's vomiting. Bridget, I know, has come down with being sick. Now, I did see some sources that say everybody in the house, but I also saw things, I never saw anything that was talking about her puking specifically, and I think from the vantage point that I was reading, they would have commented if she was vomiting as well. Because I read the vomiting as I'm suspicious that there was poison involved with that. It is very possible that it was fish that had gone bad.
Right. And it was a very hot summer that year.
It was a very hot summer.
And I know at least Bridget was very nauseous because of the heat.
I didn't know she was nauseous because of the heat. I just saw that she was vomiting and assumed that it was related because other people in the house were vomiting too, and they were concerned that it was poison.
There was a situation where you may not be getting to that, but she took a nap because she was trying to clean a window in the attic, and she got so hot she almost passed out.
Thank you for just explaining why she napped. We are going to get into that, but I didn't know. I just assumed she was feeling bad because she was vomiting.
Gotcha. It was a record-breaking hot year, and they didn't have AC.
Interesting. The only thing is the timing of it.
Right.
Is also a bit suspicious.
Yeah.
Moving on. Okay, so now we have the events of August 3rd have come to an conclusion. We are waking up on August 4th, 1892. Now, Abby, Andrew, and John, so that is the father, the stepmother, and the maternal uncle who is visiting, are having breakfast together at about 7 a.m. Andrew and John are starting to visit together while Abby starts to do things around the house. I know at some point she dusts. Yeah, Abby.
Oh, I thought Abby was... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting her confused with Emily.
Who's
Emily? Not Emily? The older sister.
Emma.
Okay.
Emma is not at the house.
Yes, that's why I was confused.
Emma is 15 miles away.
Yes. Okay.
Emma is literally the only person who probably doesn't have anything to do with this.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
maybe.
Yeah, probably. Who knows what she knew or didn't know?
Right.
I don't know. But
Abby was cleaning the house.
Yeah. Like, she was doing some household things. Like, you have a maid, but you also need to do other things, too.
Right.
Yeah. So, John leaves at 8:45 a.m. to go visit other relatives who are in town. So, he's like, I'm staying with you guys, but I'm going to go and visit other people. Bridget, the maid, throws up in the backyard at around this time. She is also cleaning the windows outside for a lot of time. So if you don't know where Bridget is, just assume she's cleaning a window this morning. I will specify when she's not cleaning a window.
Okay.
And she's also, at one point, talking to a neighbor maid.
Okay.
Yes. At 9 a.m., Lizzie has a bit of coffee in the kitchen and leaves the room shortly thereafter. We don't exactly know to where. And Lizzie had asked her dad to mail some things for her. So when he goes out on Saturday morning to go and do some work things, it was pretty vague. He's going to go do some work things. The idea is he's going to drop off these things she asked him to mail as well. And he leaves, I guess probably about 9 a.m. I think he leaves a little bit after John does. So Abby goes up to dust the second floor up the front staircase, so guest room, Lizzie's room, at about 9:30 a.m. And Bridget moves in from the outside windows to the inside windows at about this time. So Bridget's just doing her thing. Andrew comes back home, and he's trying to get into the door, but remember how I said they're locking everything? He kind of jostles the handle and stuff, so she has to go over and try to let him in.
Who's she? Lizzie?
Bridget.
Bridget, okay.
So Bridget's trying to let him in, and it's kind of hard to do this back and forth. And so they're kind of both struggling from the door, and she hears a giggle, like a laughter from above her. She says, like, at the top of the front staircase, and she assumes that it's Lizzie doing the laughter. So eventually they get him in. He goes back into the house. Bridget is cleaning the inside windows, and Andrew decides to nap in the sitting room, but before he does that, I believe Lizzie tells him that... she doesn't tell him. Andrew goes to nap in the sitting room. Sorry, there's some moving parts in here.
Yeah, a lot is happening concurrently. Andrew goes to nap in the sitting room. He's on the settee. Lizzie is going to go iron handkerchiefs in the dining room, and before she does that, she runs into Bridget, and she tells Bridget that Abby, the stepmother, I'm only reminding you that because there's a lot of names involved here, Abby, the stepmother, got a call from somebody who lived nearby who was feeling sick, a friend of hers, so she went to go visit them. And she also told Bridget that there was a sign for, quote, yard goods, like they were selling, I'm assuming, yard tools. And Bridget said, okay, I'll go check that out, but right now I have to nap. And now from your information, we now know that she was napping specifically because she didn't feel well because it was hot outside and she'd been cleaning a whole bunch of windows. She went to nap specifically in the attic room, which was on the 3rd floor, which was her room, which you can get to via the back staircase. Okay.
All right, 10 minutes later, she's not 10 minutes into her nap, this poor girl, when Lizzie calls up to her and she says, quote, come down quick, father's dead, somebody's come in and killed him, end quote. First reaction from me is that that's a specification of somebody's come in and killed him. Whereas I think I'd be like, ah! Like, yeah, I don't think I would specify somebody came in and killed him.
Especially since, I don't know if you've seen the crime scene photos. You have?
It's gruesome.
It's gruesome. It's
awful.
terrible.
So Bridget gets down there. What she sees is that Andrew had, I mean, they're not counting it, but he did end up having 10 wounds by a small hatchet striking his face, which we know from, like, about a hatchet striking a face is that is a very emotionally I am personally angry at you. That is what somebody does when they're personally angry at somebody. It's not just like a random person would come in, want to rob the place, and then hit somebody 10 times in the face. That's not what would happen. So Lizzie tells Bridget to go and get the doctor. The doctor is Dr. Seabury W. Bowen, and I'm assuming... Yeah. This is the same doctor who Abby talked to about getting poisoned. He lives across the street. He wasn't there, but his wife was, so she told the wife what happened. Then she went and got Alice Russell. I think Lizzie might have sent her to go get Alice Russell, but I'm not sure. And remember, that was the friend that Lizzie divulged things to a little bit ago.
Right, the 40-year-old not dating anyone.
40-year-old not dating anybody. It should be noted that there were, like, literally they were bracketed by doctors. There was a doctor across the street. There was a doctor diagonal. There was a doctor to their side. She only sent her to get the doctor across the street, but did not end up sending her to go get either of those doctors. Both of those doctors were, I don't know if they were themselves immigrants, but they were descendants of either Portuguese or Irish immigrants.
Gotcha.
Okay, so I'm saying she was prejudiced in that as well. And also, she probably, like, you don't need a doctor in this situation, sorry to say it.
Well, I think, would you not need at least somebody there?
You would need somebody, but I guess the thing to do would be to get the doctor, because probably the doctor would know who to get otherwise.
Yeah.
So, okay, Bridget went and got Alice Russell, and then a neighbor had heard what was going on. I think her last name was Churchill, and she went to get her handyman to get help. So basically, people are starting to converge on this spot. It should be noted that nobody who was like a neighbor, because this is a busy street, nobody saw anybody go into or out of the house during this time when the murders, or at least the murder, took place. And nobody heard it either, which is a little bit surprising. So Bridget, when they get back to the house, Bridget asks if she should go get Abby, because to Bridget's knowledge, Abby is out seeing a sick friend. She's like, I need to go get Abby. I need to tell her what's going on. I need to get her back to this situation. And Lizzie said in response, quote, Maggie, I am almost positive I heard her coming in. Won't you go upstairs to see? End quote. So Bridget goes with the neighbor who had trickled her way over, Mrs. Churchill, and they go upstairs to see about Abby. They peer into the guest room, and she is a little bit obscured by the bed, so Mrs. Churchill goes around the corner, and she sees her. Abby is lying on her front, and in the back of her, there's about 19 hatchet wounds. So Abby is dead as well, and so the two women run downstairs screaming, and Alice asks, is there another? Meaning, is there another body up there? So she's understanding what's going on. A couple things that were noted when police got there. This was not a robbery. Nobody stole anything.
Right.
Again, nobody heard anything. Nothing was done except the murder of these two people. So as police are interviewing Lizzie, they refer to Abby as Lizzie's mother, and Lizzie says, oh, Abby was not my mother, she was my stepmother. And, like, she apparently made that remark in such a way that they wanted to note it down for being a little bit too forceful, perhaps, because it wasn't so much, it seems, a correction as, no, I need you to know that she was not my mother.
Yeah.
And they noted that when they interviewed her, she was not crying, she was not emotional. Now, I will say, she could have easily been in shock.
Right.
That is a thing, spoiler, I think Lizzie did it. That is a thing that I can understand anybody, especially moment of people are converging on your house, you've just witnessed this. You've
seen a very grisly scene. Like, I mean, I haven't seen the photos myself, but, like, I heard, like, an eyeball is popping out, like...
I saw it. It's the thing, how about this? I'm looking at it, and I know from where it is on the body that it's a face. I would not be able to tell that it's a face otherwise. I did not try to figure out where things were on the face. They asked her about her whereabouts during this time, and she said that, you know, her dad came home. She was out doing things around the house for the day. Her dad came home. He goes to sleep. She goes outside to the barn where there's a loft, as we know because of the pigeon incident, and she is looking for sinkers, which are contraptions that you use to weigh down your bait when you're fishing. And she said she was there for about 15 or 20 minutes looking. So the police go up to the loft just to, I guess, see what she's talking about. And there's 2 issues with this. One, it is the hottest year on record, which I actually did not know. I just knew they said it was crazy hot and that they cannot imagine her being up there for 15 or 20 minutes because apparently it was particularly hot in the loft. And they also said they did not see any footprints that would have been hers.
Okay.
So a couple issues with that story. And I didn't go in and read her full inquest.
Testimony?
I mean, I'm sure she gave a few. I did not go in and read her full testimony, but I did see that there was a lot of contradictions. Like,
Okay.
she was changing her story, apparently. And, okay, I saw this on one source. Apparently, the day of the murders, a Portuguese immigrant was arrested for the crime, but they were, I'm assuming, immediately let go because most of the sources I see say nobody was ever charged for this crime.
Gotcha.
So, as unfortunately you and I know from studying some older crimes that happened, they, like, immediately grab
the closest person.
the closest person. Often it is immigrants. They immediately grab the closest immigrant is what I'm seeing a lot. So that seems to be one of the cases of it. Now, we're kind of going to get into the things that happen after this and what's pointing out about this that makes it a little bit suspicious. So Andrew and Abby's bodies stayed in the house for a week. They were on the dining room table, and I believe that is where they were performing the autopsies. Interesting choice.
Yeah.
And, Lizzie was staying in that house for the week, and her friend Alice was like, okay, I'm going to sleep in the house too for a week. And I'm just saying that Alice is a very solid friend.
Yes.
Like, that is a lot. Now, on August 6th, so this is 2 days after the murders, Lizzie gave the police a dress that she claimed she was wearing the day of the murders, and it only has a little bit of a drop of blood on it, like tiny, 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 and nothing else on it. And you can't murder people in the fashion that these people were murdered and
not get a buttload of blood on you.
And it would make sense that there would be blood on it too, because she was the first to find these bodies. Maybe she touched it or anything, you know. However, the day after that, on August 7th, we know because Alice Russell eventually testified this. She kept this detail to herself for a very long time, but eventually did testify in front of the jury that on August 7th, Lizzie opened the pantry closet, took out a blue corduroy dress, and then burned it. And Lizzie would say that was because there was paint stains on it. And the obvious conclusion that other people were drawing is that there was blood on it, that she did not give the correct dress to the authorities.
Though I have seen one thing that said with the style of dress that Lizzie was wearing, she needed her maid's help to be able to wear it.
So you're saying the maid would have had to have helped her out of it?
Yes, the maid had to have been, because the buttons, the way they were done up in the back in those days for the, royalty, not the royalty, but the richer people who had somebody to help them dress up, she would not have been able to undress and redress herself in that span of time.
My opposing thing. Okay, so there was maybe a 10-minute span. If you have a knife and the willpower, you can get out of anything of clothing you need to. So interesting point. I'm combating it, but interesting.
But did she have a knife?
She had a hatchet, in my mind.
Okay. Well,
I'm sure there was a knife in the house.
Probably. But I think even dressing in that time span took a lot. So I don't know if she even would. So, whether or not she's behind the murders, I 100% believe that she was not the one who swung the axe.
Really? Let's get to that in a bit.
Okay.
Okay. I kind of want to, go through the whole thing and then, go over our what do we individually think. Okay. So it should be noted that the ultimate authorities in charge, the police marshal, the district attorney, and judge, kind of all ended up thinking that she was probably guilty. It ended up being that, she only faced her real trial in June of the year after this. And to be honest with you, I don't quite understand the inquest versus the trial that's going to decide if she goes to the big trial. So that kind of timeline confused me, but I will tell you the gist of it all. And it should be noted that there were 2 huge opposing viewpoints on Lizzie. Let's say the newspaper that was more for the working class were anti-Lizzie, while as the Hill's newspaper, or the one popular in the Hill, was very pro-Lizzie, because the idea is, oh, but she's just a lovely Victorian maid, and she could never do this. And of course she could. Yeah. Or
theoretically.
Theoretically she could. They had an inquest after the murders, and Lizzie
Women
spoke.
can be murders too.
They can? They can.
Yes.
This is...
Empowering all women murderers out there.
So there was an inquest 5 days after the murders. Lizzie spoke under oath, and other people came to her defense because, like I said, she was kind of getting some things backwards and wrong. And the doctor of the Bordens, who really did think that Lizzie was innocent, he was like, I gave her a double dose of morphine. And
as in, like, he injected her with morphine?
He prescribed her.
Okay.
I think.
Prior to the murders or after the murders?
I think it was after the murders.
Okay. Like, she was so hysterical.
That was my understanding, but I don't know for sure, but that's
okay.
my understanding. And he said that the double dose of morphine could result in confusion, which could cloud her testimony. Which, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Emma told authorities that neither she nor Lizzie disliked their stepmother.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting take. And Lizzie was arrested on August 11th, which was almost a week after the murders, and she was in county jail for 9 months. So that news got national attention. So pro-women movements and like suffragists, people who wanted women to be able to vote, they were very pro-Lizzie.
Okay.
And they brought up the fact that she would not end up being judged fairly like the Constitution promises because it was an all-male jury. So you're not being judged by a jury of your peers,
mm-hmm.
which was accurate. And also the Women's Christian Temperance Union, which Lizzie was a part of, called her a Protestant nun.
Oh.
Just an interesting turn of phrase I wanted to let you know about. She hired a great lawyer from Boston, and most of the people in the courtroom, the audience of it, were very pro-Lizzie.
Mm-hmm.
So she got a lot of support. And I found it very interesting the way they had her dressed. She was wearing all black, and she was carrying flowers and a fan in, like, either hand. And so that is a very... Black, obviously, you're mourning, but the things that she's holding are very feminine things.
Right.
Like, who just goes around carrying flowers?
Not many people, though.
Not
I do believe she would casually be having a fan because it is a very hot summer.
Yes, but the flowers of it
But the
all.
flowers, yeah.
Also, there might have been a little bit of corruption within the actual courtroom because one of Lizzie's lawyers used to be the governor of Massachusetts, and he had actually appointed one of the 3 justices who were, like, oversitting the jury or something. To be honest, I'm kind of confused about the whole court system in this time period, but I'll take their word for it. And like I said, there was a certain amount of evidence withheld, like the fact that she was trying to buy the poison. And the jury acquitted Lizzie
mm-hmm.
very quickly. They actually acquitted her pretty immediately and then waited an hour before they gave their opinion because otherwise it would look like they did it too quickly.
Right.
And also, the idea is they probably didn't want to hang a woman. I saw this interesting, horrible, sad fact, but the last time a woman had been hanged in Massachusetts, they later discovered that the woman was actually 5 months pregnant, and they really didn't want to make that mistake again, or anything close to it. I think it kind of made them shy away from hanging women. Not that anybody was ever really pro-hanging women, honestly. So, she's free in the aftermath. She and Emma moved...
Wait, you're not going to mention the bucket of blood?
What?
The bucket of blood. Okay, so she had a bucket of blood in her room.
What?
Yes. So
I did a lot of research on this. I want you to know that.
So she had a bucket of blood in her room, and it was a bucket of bloody rags.
Mm-hmm.
And the people against her brought it up like she was bloody, and she used these rags to, like, wash her face, wash her hands off. So wash the blood off of her.
So you agree with me?
No.
Okay.
Because... it's just a funny thing.
Okay.
So they brought up so it's like this man lawyer, right, in front of a bunch of men in this court system.
Oh.
And he's like, this is a bucket of blood of bloody rags. And she just goes, hi, yeah, those are my menstrual rags. And because back then, they would literally take a rag and shove it up them. Mm-hmm. And that was how they stopped their period from staining their clothes. And they would then dispose of them into a bucket, and then they would burn the rags or clean them. I think they would mostly burn them. So that's how they would do that. And the second she mentioned that, all the men in the entire courthouse was like, oh, that's inappropriate to talk about. And they immediately discounted the rags as...
Okay, but what I'm saying is, they're not necessarily... Well, I didn't even know this, but just because she says they're menstrual rags does not mean...
I mean, they're probably menstrual rags.
It could easily not be.
I agree.
I do like that story.
Yes, but it's very funny.
Yes.
But they were menstrual rags. I just find it very funny.
Okay. So 2 months after the verdict, we're getting to the point where you and I can debate.
Okay.
2 months after the verdict, she and Emma move to the Hill because, of course, now they've got the inheritance of $7 million worth in today's money. They buy a house that has 4 bathrooms instead of the 1 water closet. And while she did used to have a lot of support from the community, it seems now that she was acquitted, it was waning.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, she kind of got to a point where she stopped going out to public,
Mm-hmm.
and kids would, like, egg her house and prank her a lot. And so she and Emma are living together. She does go out to different places. She goes to D.C., Boston, New York. Apparently, a store in Providence, Rhode Island sent out a warrant for her arrest, or I guess through the police, because they said she was shoplifting stuff. She did pay the money back, and so that seemed to kind of be put under the rug. She also, here's the thing that's kind of interesting, she hosted a dinner for a theater group,
Mm-hmm.
and that seemed possibly to have resulted in a fight between Emma and Lizzie in 1904, and then Emma moved out in 1905. And that was actually the last time they ever saw each other. There was something that happened there. Maybe it was the theater troupe that caused them to have that rift. And the reason I bring up maybe it was the theater troupe is because that seemed to have been the town's final straw with her. Like, they just did not like theater people.
Oh.
Like,
The town didn't like theater people?
I think it was considered, like, scandalous that she did that.
Oh.
More scandalous than murdering her parents. Sorry.
Okay.
Lizzie died in 1927. Emma died 9 days later, and they're actually laid to rest beside Andrew, beside Abby, beside their mother, and beside the 2-year-old sister that they shared. So it seems like even though there were things kind of going on with Lizzie in the town, like they were kind of breaking her and stuff, people stopped talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
It was like when she got acquitted, they stopped having the conversation. So a woman named Florence Brigham, I read this great article in New York Times Magazine by Mary Cantwell. It was in the 90s, and so Florence Brigham was actually, I think, in her 90s at that point, so she wasn't alive when the trial happened, but she had grown up in Fall River, and she knew a lot of people who were associated with the trial.
Mm-hmm.
And so she said, quote, in an article by Mary Cantwell, she said, quote, "I might have found out so much about this, and so could a lot of others, if only it hadn't been a closed subject. Why, Alice Russell was my sewing teacher at Highland School. I could have asked her. When I think of it, I had so many ties to the story, and I never asked. Nobody did, out of respect to the name, out of respect to the other Bordens who still lived here. When my son was a little boy, he asked his grandmother if Lizzie did it. She said, Lizzie Borden was tried, and she was acquitted, and we don't talk about that anymore." Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, and of course now, everybody talks about Lizzie Borden in that town. It's like a
Right.
huge thing. You can go there, you buy Lizzie Borden tote bags. I saw that there's a Lizzie Borden conference.
You can go into the Lizzie Borden house and sleep in the same bed that the mother, or Abby, was found beside.
I wouldn't wanna.
You can sit on the same couch that the father was found.
Again, I wouldn't wanna. I think that's
A little much.
it's too much.
Yeah.
It's because I mean this
Like, it's the same couch. It's not like a replica. It's the same couch.
is the same couch. This is a huge tragedy for this family.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to note that the name people know is Lizzie Borden. It's not Andrew Borden. It's not Abby Borden. But they were the people who, like, suffered.
Right.
And I'm sure you can argue if you think that Lizzie Borden didn't do it, that she suffered as well. And I'm sure, like, either way, she suffered from being ostracized. But really, they are literally the victims.
Right.
Here's a little bit of interesting information. Andrew J. Jennings was one of Lizzie's lawyers. I got the idea that she kind of had a few. And when the trial was over, he put all his possessions that had to do with the trial, including recordings, notes, and other things like what we would consider evidence,
Mm-hmm.
including pillow shams from the guest room bed that had a little bits of blood on them, and a hatchet that didn't have a handle. He put that into a thing called a hip bath, which a hip bath is literally a very small bath. You could kind of get into it, and it would only cover part of you.
Mm-hmm.
And he put a cover over the hip bath, and he did not talk about the trial anymore. He wanted to hide it all away, and I'm assuming he wanted to hide it all away from even himself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if you think the person didn't do it, why would you hide this all away in that way? What? Because it felt to me like he was covering something up, not necessarily like He didn't want anybody else to know, though I'm sure that was it. But if you are putting your own possessions like this into something and putting it away from you, you don't want to see it either. You don't want to think about it. So the hip bath still exists, and the lawyer's daughter gave it to the local historical society, and it still has all the stuff in the hip bath in it. It's all there. Obviously, we're still talking about it today. It happened in 1892, and can you remember the nursery rhyme?
Oh, yeah, it's something about, like, Lizzie Borden whacked her dad 92 times, went upstairs and gave her mom a 93rd.
Close, but not exactly.
It's something like that.
What my point was, it's so prevalent, we all know the nursery rhyme, I guess we don't. But it's Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41.
Okay.
And so in a way, like, it's been trivialized, even though it is an incredibly weird thing to trivialize. Also, I read in, like, a thing called Monsterverse, which is a Penguin's Everyman's Library classic that has different poems to do with monsters in it. It's like an anthology. It included one about Lizzie Borden. It was very interesting. Yeah. It was like the Ghost of Lizzie Borden Bayou, and it was very modern. So, oh, wait. I'm not done. I have a section. Can I tell you about the section? Sure. It's the theories.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
so people, and you know what, let's just get into the argument of it here. Some people don't think that Lizzie did it. A lot of people do.
Yes.
A lot of people do. Zoey. Some people don't, and they have other theories, including Bridget the maid, which she was the only other person in the house. There's an idea of another child of Andrew's who may or may not exist, but the idea is he would have been an illegitimate son. I literally never saw anything of concrete evidence about that. Emma, some people think, even though she was away at the time. Some people say that guess that it could have been anybody on the street who just came in and did it. And then Zoey, your guy, the uncle. John Vinicum Morse. Yeah. Convince me.
So, it ties back to what you didn't know about the land. So, basically, her father was known for being stingy with his money and his land. However, he kept giving things away to his wife and his wife's family.
Okay.
And John was his first wife's family, like the blood of his children. And he came and he asked for a loan, and he was turned down for the loan by the father Andrew. And people believe that he grew so freaking angry that he was denied the loan, even though he's like the blood of his children, versus this is a woman who he trivialized their relationship.
Gotcha.
And so some people believe he did not actually leave the house, that he hid in the house. So supposedly he was supposed to leave that morning, but they said that he hid in the house, and then when everybody else was busy, he came back upstairs to kill them. And he has a motive because he was turned down for the loan. And in this situation, Lizzie Borden and the maid Bridget are in lesbians with each other.
Why necessarily?
So apparently they're...
Not as in I don't understand why. Why is in this particular theory they are?
Because that puts Lizzie in the attic with Bridget at the time of the killing. Because there was supposedly... I didn't do the research on this episode, but from what I've heard, there was supposedly a love letter between the two of them that was burned. But it's like one of those letters where it's like historians would say they're friends.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So supposedly there was a letter between them, and so they were happy taking a nap together, wink wink, in the attic.
Even though Bridget had thrown up earlier that day.
Yeah.
Like, it was obviously to the point that she was not feeling well.
I guess it could have been like taking care of her. I know when I heard about this.
But it could have been something too intimate to share.
Yes.
Okay.
They were having relationship things with each other, whether that be caring or sexual.
Okay.
And that would explain, A, why Lizzie didn't want to tell anybody. And why her story was broken up. And B, why the maid couldn't really say anything.
Yeah.
Because, that's another portion of it. So I know I was saying in lesbians with each other, but some people argue that perhaps that Bridget wasn't actually in the relationship fully consensually.
I mean, it would have
There's
been
a power
bit of
dynamic.
Yeah, because you work for this family and this person's...
And you can't really say no.
Yeah.
And, of course, anytime that there is a woman in this time who never marries a man, people automatically assume that there's a little bit of gay stuff going on.
And it could be, but there are a lot of people in this story who happen to be women who are not married.
Right. But I just have to, like, that plus the clothes thing. I know you said, like, cut it away. I don't think she cut it away, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, the way the buttons are done up, you have to have somebody dress you. There was no way that she was able to change her clothes in the span of time.
I wonder who gave the timeline of when Andrew Borden came into the house. Because if he came in earlier than what they said, and they're the ones who said it,
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if she would have then had more time to take it off, and they didn't want to allow for the time that it took to perhaps clean up their parts of the murders. And I realize in saying that I'm incorporating Bridget into that already.
Oh, yeah, there's no way that Lizzie was a part of it where Bridget was not, I think.
What would have been Bridget's motivation? Would it have been a secret deal between her and Lizzie that Lizzie would give her money?
I think it would have just been Lizzie's commands kind of thing, because Bridget was an immigrant as well.
True.
So she really had no power in the situation. Also, they didn't find a murder weapon, the hatchet, on the grounds, and Lizzie would have had no time. They did find a hatchet downstairs in the basement with dust all over it, though.
There were 2 axes and 2 hatchets in the house, none of which had blood on them.
Yes. So there was no way Lizzie could have gotten rid of the weapon in that span of time.
It does seem to me that she hid some things.
Yes, which is why people think it's the lesbian thing.
No, like as in literally hid objects.
Oh, that's what you mean. Okay.
Yeah. Because, I mean, why would the lawyer have a handleless hatchet in the hip bath that he hid all of the things associated with this case into?
But did that come up anywhere else?
It came up in the New York Times article in an interview with a person who's part of the Historical Society that now owns the hip bath.
But no, like, before the hip bath, did it come up anywhere else?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No. Because the lawyer didn't present it as evidence or anything. And I also wonder why he took the pillow shams. Unless it was something about blood spatter, but I don't know if they were doing blood spatter stuff at that point.
That was another thing, because the photos, that was another thing that I've heard. The photos of the blood splatter suggest that it was somebody much taller than Lizzie who was the one who swung the axe.
Maybe. I also did hear that kind of blood spatter isn't quite as precise as forensic shows would have you think.
Dexter.
I haven't seen Dexter, but I did hear a lot of things
He's
about
a blood splatter analyst for the...
Really?
Yes.
Oh, and of course, you know, he's the...
murderer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, bringing up the affair, possibly, with the maid.
Uh-huh.
There's a 2018 film called Lizzie.
Okay.
That is about a relationship between Bridget and Lizzie. It's a fictional account of the murders where Bridget and Lizzie team up to kill Andrew and Abby with the idea of part of the major motivation is that Andrew, in this fictional account, was sexually abusing Bridget.
Ooh.
Yes. And in that one, Bridget and
Lizzie were in lesbians?
They were, yes. And Bridget was played by Kristen Stewart.
Really?
Yeah.
What year? Was
2018.
You're kidding.
No.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not kidding. I can show you the trailer.
Yes, let's watch this after that.
Okay, cool.
Wait, let's watch that after this.
Okay, cool. So, this guy named Professor Jules R., and I'm going to butcher this, Reichbusch. I don't know.
Okay.
Rick Bush? He was heavily involved in studying Lizzie, and at least one time he was chairman of her conference. And, you know, he thinks Lizzie committed the murders. He thinks that the motive was she hated money and hated Abby. And...
She hated money?
She wanted money, and
wanted
she hated
money.
Abby.
Okay.
And he said that his view of this... Put yourself in the idea of... Okay, I'm going to ask you to do a guess of thought exercise and be like, okay, let's just assume Lizzie did it.
Okay.
He's putting this in a crime of crime of passion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this would have been a crime of passion. I mean, yes, it's hectic as all get out, but it's also planned and over a set period of time. Like, it seems like Abby could have been killed a full hour and a half before Andrew was killed, for all we know.
Right.
But we don't know. I just don't think it was a crime of passion.
I think there was a lot of passion in the crime, but no, I do not believe it was a crime of passion.
His idea is that Abby saw Lizzie doing something that made Lizzie chase after Abby with a hatchet. And my thing is, I don't think Lizzie, I mean, I don't know. Maybe she did. I'd be surprised if Lizzie kept a hatchet in her bedroom for the precise moment when her family pissed her off a bit too much.
Yeah. Well, also, Abby was, like, struck from behind
she
first.
Was. She was not struck from the front. She was struck from behind, which would go into she's running.
No, I think she was, like, doing the bed linen or something.
Oh, that makes sense.
And somebody snuck up behind her and attacked.
That would make sense. Now, I'm going to close this out by kind of giving y'all a recommendation for further reading if you're interested in this. I'm going to name Professor Douglas O. Linder of the University of Missouri has a website called Famous Trials in which he goes into the proceedings of a lot of different famous trials, and he has a lot. I know he has a lot of information on Lizzie Borden. So if you want to go there, that's how I was able to get the exact timeline for the day, because it was like 7 a.m. this happened, 9:30 a.m. this happened, and that was really helpful for helping me figure out all the moving parts as they were presented.
But it didn't include the bucket of blood.
It did not include the bucket of blood. And you know what? The uncle was a background figure in a lot of this. My idea is that maybe Lizzie was planting the seeds of maybe framing the uncle, just because he came in on August 3rd in the evening, and then that night she went to Alice and was telling her she was worried about her father's enemies. So I was kind of wondering if she was going to frame him, but it obviously didn't go that way.
Right.
Yeah. But thanks, guys, for listening.
Of course. Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, just thank you, because, you're already a Patreon.
Yeah.
So keep trucking. We'll see you in a month on the 13th.
On the 13th. Very spooky.
Ooh, yeah.
Stay spooky.